Welcome everybody to my gaming journey. It's True here, bringing you a series I wanted to do for quite some time. It's where I'm going to be taking a look at each and every computer and console that I've owned during my time as a gamer. I first picked up a joystick in 1979 on the Atari 2600, and I'm going to be taking a look at each of the machines leading up to the present day when I purchased an Xbox One X. I'll be listing my 10 favourite games on each and every system, so I hope you will join me on this journey. Please remember to hit the subscribe button and notification button so you know when I upload a new episode in this series. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the following episode.
Way down deep inside of every man, there's a little boy, an Atari fan, and without any doubt, that boy will break out when he plays a game from Atari.
Have you played Atari today?
Give a man an Atari game and he'll turn into a little boy. But don't worry, he'll be grown up enough to share it.
Have you played Atari today?
So this is where it all began. As a toddler, I picked up a joystick for the very first time. Memories obviously from back then are impossible to remember correctly, but by the age of 4 I've been told I was regularly beating my dad at Combat and Space Invaders, which were the only two games that we had for a very long time. Back then I recall we had a mobile video rental man who turned up every few weeks whom we could rent films and Atari games from, and this is how I was introduced to the many games the Atari 2600 had to offer. Not knowing it at the time, but I quickly gravitated towards Activision games such as Pitfall, Frostbite and Plague Attack, to name but few, as they always seemed to have the better visuals and gameplay. Another favourite was Parker games with their big chunky silver boxes, which made Cuba, Action Force and Frogger always seem a bit more special. I still fire up a 2600 game every so often. Usually it's Pitfall in pursuit of the elusive perfect run, but whatever the game, it's as playable now as it was back in the 80s. Up until 1982 the Atari 2600 was our only gaming machine, but that was all set to change, but that's a story for another episode. The very first RPG I ever played, and unbeknownst to my young self, it was the genre that I was to grow to really enjoy. Controlling nothing more than a square, you had to track down the golden chalice and return it to the golden castle. The chalice was guarded by 3 evil dragons, each one faster and more vicious than the last. And if that wasn't enough, it was also locked behind the portcullises of the black and white castle, so it was no easy task. Armed only with a sword, if you can find it that is, to try and slay the dragons, the many mazes and randomised item placements on the harder settings really stack the odds against you. Whilst it may not look much by today's standards, Adventure, when it was released, was way ahead of the time and was just truly an amazing experience. Comet was the first video game I ever played, as it came packed in with a console. Best described as a military dogfighting game, whether it be in tanks, planes or jets. The cartridge packed a lot of variations. Tanks had many maze variants, bouncing bullets, even invisible tanks, whilst the air combat you could have clouds to obscure your vision, or even have a squadron of planes against a single lone fighter or bomber. It was a multiplayer only title, so most of the time I was playing the game against my dad, who I regularly beat. But nevertheless, as it was a packing title, this got an awful lot of playtime. While surprising to some people, Cuba is the only arcade conversion that makes my top 10 list. That's not to say the other arcade conversions such as Frogger were any lesser great games than this, but Cuba just held a personal spot in my heart on the 2600. I just loved that it was 3-dimensional and the controls were just so different to any other game. You had to really think about each control input, which I know a lot of other members of my family couldn't quite get their head around, the 3-dimensional aspects of it. The sound effects were great, the little ditty at the start, the little Cuba introduction when you started a level or started the game for the first time was amazing, and the sound when Cuba riding on the lifts with the snake jumping to his death was just fantastic. An awesome arcade conversion and still a fantastic highly playable game to this day. Action Force, or G.I. Joe Cobra Strike as it was known in the US, was a fantastic game combining 3 game modes where you had to defend the camp from a giant robot Cobra which spat acid and laser beams down at your fleeing troops. In single player you control both a gun to destroy the Cobra and a shield to block the Cobra's attacks, so it's quite a busy game with a lot of attention needed to what you was doing at any one time. If you lost 3 army men below the shield, it was game over. The best bit about this game was modes 2 and 3, with mode 2 offering co-op where you played as 2 guns and 2 shields together defending the base, or the highlight of the entire package was mode 3 where one player took control of the mighty robot Cobra raining acid and lasers down on the army while the other player bravely tried to defend. It was just an amazing experience and my first time encountering versus play in a video game. The Atari 2600 was awash with space shooters, so Mega Mania's position on this chart is probably something not to be expected, but I absolutely loved this game. It was one of the few games that we did actually own on the Atari 2600 after pestering my parents to actually get it for one of my birthdays. It's a weird kind of game because the enemies you fight are kind of everyday objects with hamburgers, irons, bow ties, diamonds, fluffy dice, car tyres. It's just a bit of a bizarre oddity. I love the patterns of the enemies as well. They were so hard to maneuver against, especially the wafer enemies in round 2 and the tyres, which mimic the same patterns. I never got past the 3rd cycle of the game ever, but to this day it is one of my favourite space shoot 'em ups of all time. Keystone Capers is another Activision classic. You played as Keystone Kelly, who was the cop, and had to capture Harry the Hooligan, who was robbing a department store. You start off the bottom of the screen on the bottom floor, and Harry starts on the middle floor, and you have to capture him by running left to right and vice versa, up and down the floors until you actually capture him before he escapes from the rooftop. To cut him off at the pass, you've got the elevators, but you've got to be careful because if you go in front of him, he will turn around. The downside of that, if he does turn around and reach the escalators, you cannot go down the escalators, which was probably a bit of an oversight on their part, but nevertheless, this is a fantastic game. The enemies were clever. They were used from items that you'd find in a department store, such as supermarket trolleys, bouncing beach balls, radios, and even airplanes, which resulted in instant death if you didn't manage to duck under them. Just another fantastic title from Activision, and one of many that are going to crop up in this list from now on. This is Pressure Cooker, a game that has so much going on, it is unbelievable. You play as a short order chef who has to make hamburger orders, which you can see at the bottom of the screen there, which tells you which ingredients are needed. You also got to pay attention to the conveyor belt at the left as well, which your lower bread bun will drop off the end of the conveyor and cost you valuable time or valuable life points. Again, if that wasn't all to contend with, you have to make sure the right ingredients are coming out of the slots there for you, and only pick up the ones that are needed and belly bounce the ones that are not back into the wall. Otherwise, again, you will lose valuable life points. And then to top it all off there's a second screen where you have to deposit the burger down the right chute so the right customer gets the burger. Even after putting all the correct ingredients in there, you can still mess up and cost you valuable life points. There was just so much going on with this game. It was such a busy experience, and that is why I loved it so much, because you had to give the game 100% concentration, otherwise you would fail drastically. Yet another Activision classic, and this one is Frostbite. You play as Frostbite Bailey, who is on his never-ending task to build his home, build his igloo. I think the reason I love this game so much is its fast-paced nature. You have to jump from the top of the screen down onto 4 rows of icebergs. Every time you land on a row, you build a block of your igloo. Unfortunately, you have to complete all the set of 4 before they become available again to you. So jumping up and down several times is the task at hand there. To stop that is wildlife. You've got birds, you've got crabs, you have oysters, I believe they are. And top it all off there, you're not even safe on land once you progress past the 4th stage. You have a pesky bear to contend with. But this was just simply fast-paced score attack game that's held my attention for a long time and is the reason why it's so high on the list. There's not much anybody more can say about Pitfall. It's just the ultimate classic and definitely my second favourite best game under 2600. It was just such an amazing title. I mean, as a child I just simply ran from left to right or right to left if I wanted to make it harder for myself. But coming back to the game in later life, I learned that the underground passages, which I mostly ignored, were actually the key to getting the perfect score. So in later life I have come back and tried to get that elusive perfect run. I've not got anywhere near to it, but it's still a challenge I like to undertake every so often and challenge myself to get it done there. Probably gave us one of the most iconic sounds in video games as well. That classic rope swing sound that plays every time you swing over a pit is just a sound that is just embedded in my memory and probably will be forever. And finally, my favourite game on the Atari 2600 of all time is Yars Revenge, made by the same person who incidentally brought us the infamous E.T. the Extraterrestrial, which was blamed for the notorious video game Crash. Yars Revenge just has so much going on for it. You have to fly your Yar ship into the enemy control ship in the event to destroy its core. Now to do that you have to obtain a missile by either nibbling away at its shields by bumping into it or by moving over the control unit itself, then aiming the missile to destroy the control unit. Every so often the control unit will turn into the notorious swirl or walnut whip, as I used to call it as a kid, to home in and try and kill you. It was such a fantastic game, such a fantastic experience, and deserves to be number 1 on this list. So I hope you enjoyed my look back at the Atari 2600, my very first video gaming console, and the games I most enjoyed on it. And if you did, why not hit the subscribe and notification button so you know when I upload the next episode. And ask yourself, guys,
Have you played Atari today?